Welcome back to the show, you guys. I'm so excited for today's guest. We couldn't figure out if this is his second time or third time on the show, but I have been a longtime fan of this man and his work. And we're going to bring you a conversation today that is going to be a little untapped on the what's really going on underneath the layers of the feelings that we're pretending not to feel. So today we have my good friend. He's a mentor of mine, but he knows it but doesn't know it. I follow this person on social media and I'm deeply inspired by the content he creates, by being vulnerable and just showing up unapologetically. Rob, welcome to the show. How are you?
I'm so good. I'm so excited to be here. Love and admire you and your work so much. And I feel so honored and grateful to be back. So thank you.
My gosh, I'm just grateful for your time. You guys, this man is an Ivy League educated positive psychology expert, celebrity happiness coach, two-time published author, and television host and producer. So when we say he's been around the block and talked to probably close to millions of people at this point, whether it was directly front facing or to the TV with all of us listening or the people on social media. I mean, when you talk about the impact that you've made, it's extraordinary. His work has been endorsed by my favorite, the Queen, Oprah, Vanessa Williams, Lisa Nichols, and many, many others. In addition to serving as celebrity love coach for Famously Single on the E Network for 2 seasons, Robert also worked as consulting producer and on camera expert for Mind Your Business on the OWN Network, an executive producer and host of Good Morning. It's Lala, right? La La Land?
Yes.
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 On Apple TV and Hulu. He's been featured on so many shows like Good Morning America, The Today Show, CBS Morning Show, Access Hollywood, and probably shows that we don't even know about because they've probably been in other countries and in other languages, but in magazines like GQ, Self, Health, Cosmopolitan, Well and Good and Glamour. His first book, which I had the pleasure of getting several years ago, Happiness from the Inside Out, is The Art and Science of Fulfillment, celebrity endorsed, and just a great book for anybody really seeking that happiness. And then his most recent release, Love from the Inside Out, Lessons and Inspiration for Loving Yourself, Your Life, and Each Other, is also a bestseller. So, Robert, when we talk about you having your accolades, we got some accolades. So, someone listening to this bio, which when you hear that, how does that land for you? Are you
Well,
like,
I mean, I'm only 21. I'm only 21, so it's a lot. I mean, I love receiving and I've had to work on receiving. And, if it's up to me, I would come back here every single day just to have you flood me with such warmth and kindness and generosity. But,
we
there's part of me that certainly deeply receives it, but there's also a part of me that's like, I don't really buy into any of it either. It's sort of like, oh, that's great. I love it. It's exciting and I feel super grateful. At the same time, the things that I'm probably most proud about are inner and not outer.
Sure, sure.
Yeah.
But I think, yes, to that point, like that inner created the outer.
Mm.
And I don't think you would have been able to do or show up at the level you did if you hadn't been also doing the work. And I know you have a pretty incredible story, but I want to just kick us off because someone might listening hears your bio and thinks, okay, easy for him to talk about happiness. He's trained in it. He's got, all these accolades. He's got to talk to all these people. But what's something in your personal life that didn't match that identity at all? And how did you kind of reconcile that?
Yeah. So, trigger warning for folks out there. I was suicidal. I was suicidal for at least 2 decades. I was suicidal since I was probably about 6 or 7 years of age. And I was, as far as I'm concerned, the unhappiest person on the planet. I mean, really. And I never thought I would ever be anything other than miserable and deeply depressed. And the only way out I ever imagined was by killing myself. So I lived that way for a long, long time, despite doing pretty well athletically and academically and even eventually socially and romantically. Just that deep, dark depression didn't seem to ever lift. And it took me a lot of hard work and a lot of deep diving to eventually come out of that.
So wild. I know. I every time I hear you say that, I'm like, I never thought I'd understand what that felt like. Second trigger warning, but I have actually experienced that later in life. And I think it's because people like you were open enough to share those moments publicly that when those feelings started to kind of creep in, I was like, this is a season. I can change this. I can also accept that I'm feeling this way and let that also be okay. We don't have to quote unquote do anything about it today, but I'm going to recognize that this is what I'm feeling. I'm not going to pretend that I'm not feeling this way. I'm not going to tell myself that I'm not depressed or feeling this sensation of not wanting to be here anymore. And nobody, I've actually never talked about this on the podcast ever has heard me say something like that. One, because of my fear of like my son ever hearing it, but two, just like that perceived judgment of weakness of and selfishness. People often look at that as something of a selfish act. And I think I'm just grateful that it's become more mainstream the conversations of how we're actually feeling so that when it happens to people, I can still deal with it in private. I can still deal with it within myself, but there's resources, there's books, there's people, there's podcasts, there's been conversations that have allowed me to know that I'm not alone.
Mm, so powerful. And just when I think I can't like you anymore, I suddenly do. Jessica, my favorite people are people that have experienced, the darkness and devastation and depression that life often, invites us into, right? So the fact that you found your way out of the depths and the darkness and into the light again is a testament to your resilience and also to your brilliance and persistence, right? And it's also a good reminder for all of us that as much as you achieve, as much as you accomplish, and as beautiful as you might be, you can still experience really tough times. And those tough times don't have to get in the way of your purpose. They can actually be part of your purpose. And you can channel all of that into something that is even more blissful and even better for you and the rest of the world. And I see you doing that consistently. So I'm really, really grateful that you would share that with me and with your audience. It means the world to me because I live for these kinds of conversations and I live to help people like you and like myself lift themselves out of, the unhappiness and the stress and the anxiety and, otherwise, things other than subjective well-being, right? So
Right.
love that so much.
And I think too, I'm at the intersection now with the work I'm doing of getting to people before those thoughts creep in, before those feelings take over and consume you. And I meet people kind of in that season where they're maybe going through a huge life pivot. I'm at middle age, if you will. She's 45 and fine to admit it. And it seems like with the pivots I've had through my career and my life, getting married young, then divorced, then now I'm married again, single mom for a little while. There's so many seasons of doubt and so many times where you kind of try to positive your way through the hard stuff. But I truly feel like, at times, if I could have had a mentor or a group of women around me while I was going through some of those things, I could have seen the light or gotten through it easier or not had to strong arm it myself. And I think that's something that people are afraid sometimes to ask for help. So if someone's feeling stuck or unfulfilled, a lot of times that's a big, huge thing, or disconnected. That's another thing that I notice in people. They've done all the things they're, like you said, on paper look great, but they just feel disconnected from who they really are. What's
Mm.
like a behavior change that they could do or make to kind of help them get through that? And so they're not like bypassing the real issues, they're actually like facing them.
Well, you hit something, which is that you can only heal something if you become aware of it first and
Right.
foremost, and then if you sort of expose it, right? You've got to look at it, and then you've got to bring it up, to the surface so that you can do something about it. If you just hide it and bury it and repress it, that's just going to manifest in ways that will not feel good and will not do good for the world, right? So that's the first piece. The second piece is spending some time there. It's uncomfortable, right? It's uncomfortable to recognize something within yourself or others that you don't particularly like or that it doesn't feel good. So you have to spend a little time just observing it, noticing it, being aware of it, and trying not to feed it with, self rumination, trying not to feed it with thoughts that make it worse. You don't want to feed it and fuel it. What you want to do is observe it without judgment and just feel it for its own sake. And if you can feel it all the way through without thinking so much, you'll be surprised at how quickly you come out of it. Right. So that's a
Yeah.
huge piece of it. And really, the easy way to say that is just getting to know yourself, right? Getting to know who and what you really are. In the beginning, knowing yourself seems like knowing, what kind of job you want and what kind of life you want. That's very helpful. And then at some points, knowing what's going on in your mind and then what's going on in your feelings and your body. But then you eventually graduate beyond that and you discover that there's something within you that I would say is invincible and it's unconditionally confident and unshakable and quite frankly divine, right? There's an intelligence within all of us that is just perfect and unharmed. It doesn't need any healing, doesn't need any solutions because it never had any problems. And so the more that you tap into that, the more you discover that any of the other problems that you think you had, they begin to solve themselves. They begin to, resolve themselves. So I think, getting to know yourself is just critical. And by yourself, I mean something deeper than what most people mean when they say it.
Right, like associating themselves with their job or I'm a wife or
That's
a
right.
mom.
That's
Yeah,
right.
and I've noticed that. I actually have a good friend who got married super young, and she didn't have much when they got married, he did, and they ended up having 3 beautiful children. They've been together 20 years, and I noticed about probably 10 years ago was when I first met her, that she was starting to feel the pull of like, "What do I want? I ended up in this life, and it's a beautiful life. It's what everybody, quote, unquote, would want, but here I am feeling unsatisfied and unhappy because I never figured out what I truly wanted or what I truly wanted to focus on."
Mm.
And I found her, taking classes at the local college and doing some of this and doing this. I just want something of my own. And it was interesting to watch and observe because here I had always had a career since 18, right? I was in the beauty industry and I didn't have that life. And so I remember her saying, I can't talk to anybody about this because I would sound like I'm complaining if anybody else heard that I was quote unquote unhappy with what I have.
Mhm.
But I know that there's more for me or that I want something else. Like, if we could speak to somebody like that right now, what would be something you could say to them? Because I know that she feels like she's in kind of a dark place, and I can feel like the light has kind of left, and she feels a little bit like, I don't I feel helpless."
Yeah. Wow. What a fantastic theme. For me, one of the greatest questions a person can ask themselves or others is, what are you optimizing your life for? Like your whole life. Like, it's easy to assume that you're just going to live forever in these beautiful human flesh costumes that we call, bodies. The truth is, your life may go on for 100 years. It may go on for one more minute, literally. Okay. Literally. So once you become crystal clear about that, and then you can ask yourself, okay, how do I want to spend this fleeting physical life that I have? And if you're honest with yourself and you dig deep enough, I think we'd all come around to agreeing that we share one similar purpose, and that purpose is happiness. I call it happiness. Some people call it fulfillment, they call it contentment. You might call it success, you might call it leaving a legacy, whatever it is that you call it. It's something that you want and only want because you think you'll feel better for having it. Okay. And the only true terminal value is what I call happiness or joy or bliss. That is our inner purpose. We all share that inner purpose. The way in which it manifests is what we'll call our outer purpose. That's how you decide to pursue that, right? So some people try to seek that through a job, through a family, and that could evolve over time. Identifying and fulfilling your outer purpose is not nearly as important as identifying and fulfilling your inner purpose. If you get really successful, but you are not happy, I call that failure. Okay. If you are extraordinarily happy, but in the world's eyes, you are not successful, you're a failure, or you don't make a lot of money, or you live on the beach, or I call that super success. Okay, super success. And the truth is, you can have both, right? In fact, we know from decades of science that if you can find a way to get unconditionally happy or just happier than you are now, you greatly increase the likelihood of success in all areas, arenas, and domains in your life, right? In terms of relationships and health and money, all of these things improve when you just find a way to live out your deeper inner purpose, which I call happiness. But you've got to do that in spite of the circumstances and conditions that you think are holding you back, right? So everybody
Mm.
thinks if I can just get the conditions and circumstances right to make enough money, meet the right person, have the kid, retire, whatever it is, I'll eventually, be successful and therefore be happy. We know that doesn't work that way. Most of us have lived long enough to be, disabused of that idea. So you've got to prioritize happiness above all else. And you have to be sort of uncensored about it. You've got to be honest with yourself. Like, what would truly deeply make you happy? You're going to die anyway. Like, do something now. Life is, slipping through your fingers, this very second.
I love that, and that is such a small shift in perspective, but it's such a huge one, and I think as a friend, like, I can't wait to send her this episode so she can hear it from you and me, I guess, in the sense because I think sometimes the people closest to us, we pray and hope that they understand, but I think we need to hear things several times before they actually land. You can hear the same thing how many times before it actually sticks and you're ready to hear it, and I think we sometimes get in our own way by not believing that that's possible for us. And I know you work with a lot of high achieving people, and I know a lot of them use success or their outward success as a distraction from doing that deeper emotional work, getting connected to themselves, like you said earlier, being the catalyst to everything. What does that look like? How have you seen
Mm,
people that you've worked with? Because I'm sure you've worked with a lot of like
yeah.
namely people who on the outside it looks great, but
Yeah. I mean, it's not a surprise to me, but I think it's a surprise to most people that someone who makes millions or billions of dollars a year, who's in the public eye, who seems to be doing what they love, they're a musician or they're an artist or they're an actor or they're a politician, that this person would at the same time be feeling deeply depressed and suicidal. And
uh
that is a regular occurrence. That is a regular occurrence. No level of success will ever prevent you from experiencing depression or suicidal ideation or stress or anxiety ever. That is always an inside job, and it's something that you do or you don't do. The only reason I even have a job myself is because these people exist, right? And I was one of those people. I didn't have that much success, but I had enough success to be able to see through it. I had a consulting job and I had a beautiful, wonderful girlfriend, and I had all the trappings of a successful life, when I was young. And yet, boy, it didn't change anything. In fact, my depression and suicidal ideation just got worse and worse over time because I lost hope. I was like, wow, if none of this stuff can make me feel better, I'm screwed. What am I going to do? Right. So for me, working with those folks often starts with just a conversation, and it's about helping folks tease out the difference between what they might call success, or they might call leaving a legacy, or they might call something that is conditional and circumstantial, and what I call happiness or joy or bliss or contentment. I think people, they have these ideas about happiness that get in the way of the experience of happiness, right? So that's the problem, is that our ideas often get in the way of the experience.
Yeah, wow, that's a powerful one. I can think of several things I wanna say right now, but I'm not ready to put on my podcast.
In time. That's me, part four, episode four. Yeah.
This is, like, where I would, like, record it and only send it to some people because I think, I'm newly married for the 2nd time. We got married in December, it is now May,
Congrats.
and thank you. There's been several things that would make anybody else think, like, "How are you guys we're long distance still, and it's been 5 years." So, it's been an interesting journey to build something different than what is traditionally accepted as what a marriage looks like, right? And I think for him, it was extremely hard because he was married for 20 years prior and had the home with the 2.5 kids and like all of the things looked perfectly aesthetic, but at one point realized he wasn't happy. And so that's why he ended up leaving the marriage. And that existed far before I ever was part of the picture. Now I come in several years later and I could see, okay, here we go. I guess I am gonna like share it on the podcast because I think it's worth sharing because I
Yes.
think at the end of the day, he's a great example of somebody who thought something was supposed to be a certain way. So in his mind, he was like, "We're not gonna get married until we live together." And I'm like, "Well, you met somebody who lives in a different state who has a
Mm.
child." And at the time, Kai was like 9 or 10. And so I'm like, "I'm never moving." And so, in that la la phase, you're like, "Oh, we'll figure it out." And, he's such a, "We'll figure it out when we get there" type of guy. And I'm like, "Well, we're here now." So, eventually it got to the point where he can't quit the job that he has because it's like, the old school golden handcuffs, awesome, amazing career that he's worked super hard for, nor would I want him to. And I've learned to just accept the way the relationship is. And I actually have learned to love it because it is what it is. And I know that if I can find peace and happiness within myself, then I'm just gonna be happy in the relationship. But I watched as he struggles through it because when you knew a past life or you had something before, I think it's sometimes hard to let go of the idea of how something should be. And as much as I know that he's doing the work as much as he can internally by himself, I'd be curious if a coach like you or someone to talk through the idea of self-fulfillment and in your own way to create that happiness so that no matter what is going on externally, whether you get to see your partner every single day or not, you internally are always pretty good no matter what life is throwing at you. And I know we all have different pressures from our jobs, from children, from, relationships or whatever that looks like. And not every day is going to be, where you're showing up as your best self or being super nice to your partner or, having your A game on social media. But at the end of the day, when you can feel that somebody's truly not happy, it's hard for the other person to hold space. So what advice would you give me
Oh, gosh, that
in
was so
i
rich.
in being supportive to somebody like that who I love deeply, I chose to marry, and it was me that was like it was back probably like 8 months ago where I was like, "Listen, I don't think this is working because I don't feel like you're happy." I said, "If
Yeah.
I thought you were happy in this, then we could carry on, whether we got married or not." We were already engaged. And I remember we kind of cute broke up, and I remember having a conversation with him a couple weeks later, and I said, "You can tell 2 stories to your friends about this. 1, she left me, oh my gosh, this was terrible. Or 2 people tried really, really hard to make something work, and it didn't work out the way that they wanted, but they both gave a solid effort and are great people." I'm like, "That's the story I would tell if, I got a chance if we're officially going to end this." I said, "Or you can wrap your head around that this is our life for now, and we can go from there." I'm like, "Kinda like you got 3 choices." And he chose the latter, so here we are, but I can still see the moments that come up where the only word I can use is, "You don't seem happy."
Boy, I had
That was
fireworks going
loaded, I'm
off in my
sorry.
it was phenomenal, it was phenomenal. I had fireworks going off in my head and my heart as I listened to you, and I've got about 25,000, like, brain browser tabs open now. So good. Folks should rewind that part because there were so many insights there. I'm gonna say a few things, and we'll, sort it out in the end. First of all, you nailed something, which is that life does not come in a one size fits all form, okay? It just does not, and you should be wary of that. You should be careful of that. If you are, living a life that feels too linear, you're probably on somebody else's path. Okay. And that's number one. It just doesn't. Okay. So, in order to be truly happy, and I would argue successful, it requires you to be a revolutionary. You've got to be rebellious. Life and happiness is for the gambler. It's like period. And so if you think that you're going to walk in somebody else's tracks and find that success that they found or the happiness that they found, it's highly unlikely, right? This is a customizable, personalizable experience that you have to carve out for yourself. And like, on one hand, it makes it very challenging for folks. On the other, super exciting because you can't get it wrong. Okay, it's the first thing. Second of all, there are sort of two quotes that I love from two virtual mentors. Buddha said, and I love it, your only problem is that you think there is time. And that's important, right? We procrastinate, we hesitate, we wait on this happiness thing, and there is no time to be waiting or wasting right now, right? So now is the time to get happy. Now, third, the second quote, Billy Bob Thornton. Billy Bob Thornton said, your only problem is that you think there are rules. Okay. There are no rules to life. Sure, there are laws out there, but most of the ideas that we have about success and about happiness, about ourselves, are not original. They're not our own. We have consumed them, we have swallowed them hook, line, and sinker from very well intentioned people, often our parents or the folks that raised us, from priests and ministers and from professors and from the corporate world. You got to be extraordinarily careful of that. There's never wisdom in crowds. There's never a crowd on the leading edge, right? So that means, again, you got to carve out your own path, and you have to throw out the rules, and you have to start from scratch. The final thing I'll say, in order to answer the question that you asked most pointedly, which is what can you do to support people who are trying to find their way, right? And I'd say the most important thing you can do is remember you can show them better than tell them. I love having these kinds of conversations. I'm also crystal clear that I can live my message much more powerfully and much more persuasively than I can talk about it, right? I can be about it and not just talk about it. So if you want to live in a happier world, or you want a happier relationship, or you want anyone in your life to be happier, you have to be happier. You have to yourself be happier. You are the closest person to that other person, or you're a meaningful part of the world, right? And so if you want a happier world, be happier. You want a more peaceful world, more peaceful. You want a more loving world, be more loving. There's no way around that. And the only reason, again, that I even have a job is because so many folks get referred to me because they're looking for happiness and they're seeing some really phenomenal therapists or psychologists or coaches, but those folks aren't genuinely, sincerely happy. And they can feel it, they can smell it, right? And it doesn't add up for them. So it doesn't work for them. So, all this being said, the happier you get, the better things go. That is also true in terms of relationships and friendships. That doesn't mean necessarily that the person you're with will get on board and up to speed with you. They might very well say, I can't do this. I'm not interested. You're at a vibrational level or frequency that I just can't continue to maintain. So, I'm going to go a different direction. And that can be tough in the moment. But if you're really, truly committed and devoted to living a happier life, you'll realize that's the best thing for them and the best thing for you too.
Oof. How simple was that, you guys listening? Like, how simple it to just think, like, if I just continue to focus on my happiness rather than dropping into the frequency of their unhappiness,
Right.
show, don't tell. So good because for me, I don't know if you know much about the human design, but as a
I
projector, like a
do.
lot
I love it.
I'm a projector, so
Ah,
emotional projector. And he's a generator, and he's also a Virgo, and I'm a Pisces, so there's a lot of different energetic flow in between that relationship, and while a lot of it's really, really good, and I've learned a lot of structure and a lot of, like, routine through him, there's the flow of my emotions that I allow to pass through me a lot easier, I think, and therefore, I don't always have to vocalize them. You might see it on my face for a hot second, and he's in a performative industry as well, as am I, and you are too. Like, there's sometimes we just have to, like, put that game face on, and doing that and choosing to be happy even through stuff that's hard has helped me tremendously to continue to get up every single day and take care of my body physically, be there as present parent, and not, jump off the side of the cliff on the way home because I literally am like, "I'm so over this shit, like, I could just not be here anymore." And I say that lightly right now, but, like, when I shared earlier, those moments of darkness that come over you because things feel so heavy or, like, the pressure for you to be the one to figure it all out. I mean, if you can just literally simplify, like Rob said, and think about the fact that you could not be here tomorrow, tonight, in 5 minutes, and choose a different state, a different frequency. It's not about like, get out of your own way. I think there's so much more to it, so much more depth to the thought around how we are actually the ones in control of our happiness,
mm.
even if you're in a situation you'd rather not be in.
Shivers. You give me soul shivers right there, Jessica. I mean, that's just so insightful and so poignant. And you absolutely nailed it, which is, and it's hard sometimes when I've worked on this thing for decades now. I can't tie my shoes. I can barely warm up food, right? So I focus on one thing and I can't do the 99 other things that probably are required to be a human being and that somehow I'm here. But what that means, however, is that, people sometimes have a hard time understanding that when I say I don't care what other people think, I mean it. I still smile. I have a good time. I meet them where they are, but I don't care what they think. And that doesn't mean that I don't care how they feel and that I want to support them in feeling better, but it's not going to come at the expense of my peace or my love or my happiness. No way at all. Right. So which often means that I meet people where they are with my words. While on the inside, I know all is well. I know all is well. I know all is well. Right. And so we can all tap into that infinite wellspring of subjective well-being, of contentment, of unconditional peace. It's really a peace that passes understanding, which means that two things. One is on one level, yes, life is extraordinarily challenging and difficult times. You don't need to try to paste smiley stickers on empty gas tanks, right? You don't need to fake this, okay? Occasionally it's helpful to fake it a little. That's fine, okay? You might have to. You might be in a business meeting or something like that. That being said, the real key is to find ways to tell yourself and other people truthful but better feeling stories about everything and do it just to feel better, right? So I don't like rain. I love sunshine. That's why I live in places like LA and Miami because I want to be in sunshine all the time. Sometimes it's raining. I can do one of two things. I can look at the rain and just stick to the facts. It's raining. Be done with it. I don't need any color commentary, any judgment. On the other hand, I can say, wow, I so appreciate the rain because it reminds me of how much I love the sunshine and I'm super excited looking forward to the sunshine, right? It's truthful, but better feeling. What most people do is they try to fake it with positivity, but down deep inside, they don't feel better. So it's not really positive if you don't feel better as a result of it. And it's only going to feel better if there's at least a seed of truth in there that you can buy into, right? So that's the first piece. So truthful, better feeling stories, or stick to the facts. And by the facts, we mean only the facts. No color commentary, no judgment, right? And the third piece is, which is honestly a cheat code, is quieting your mind altogether. I mean, do you have to have any thoughts about the rain? You don't. You don't. If it's raining and you're wet, you just experience the wetness. You don't need to add anything to it, good, bad, or indifferent. So there are lots of ways to sort of carve this thing up. But at the end of the day, happiness is the meaning and purpose of life. And it's the whole point and aim and end of human existence for me, right? Not just because it feels good, but also because it leads to doing good, right? You just do better in your life. You're a better person. Everything improves. So anyway, the point is, in order to support people in that way, you really want to be able to tap into that unconditional happiness or peace or love or whatever you want to call it that exists within you, even when things are tough or even when the other person's struggling. And that doesn't mean you have to be harsh. You can still meet them with loving, kind words. But on the inside, you have to stay centered. You have to stay cool, calm, and composed. You have to stay sort of, resting in that place of immovable, unshakable peace, love, happiness, and confidence.
This is why I'm so grateful to have read books like yours and to know that this is somebody's life's work, because I think that's why we've lasted 5 years, because even when there's moments like that of my friends sharing things with me, and I share things that I'm unhappy with all the time, like we're having a conversation talking about what went wrong or what, our, so and so did or what. Yeah, it's called a conversation. Colorful commentary, as you would say, and I think that's a way that people do connect and bond, right? So we can share stories so we feel less alone or less overwhelmed by whatever we're going through. But at the same time, I'm such a solution oriented person that I'm like, okay, now how do we flip this? How can we look at this? And that's where I think the natural progression into coaching and mentorship happened for me, because it was already happening behind the chair. And without fail, I would turn my client around or they would look in the mirror after they were done and they would be like, "Oh my god, you nailed it every time." And then the second sentence out of their mouth was like something negative about their face, their body, their skin, their "I'm fat, I'm this, I'm that." It was generally something. Or if it didn't come at the very end of the appointment, we talked about something during the appointment. My hair is feeling thin. This like something negative that was like they wanted to bring out, but I was like, I wish I would have had more tools, like, talking about finding things that were happy so that I could even just redirect the conversation, which I
Yeah.
learned to get really good at, because I learned after a full day of people just dumping on me that I couldn't hold that. I was like, I'd get to the car and literally scream in the
Mm.
steering wheel like, "Ah," you know? And I was like, "You're in control, like, they're coming into your environment, you can create a serene space." So, like, I completely redid my space, and I learned to redirect conversations. And so, if someone
Mm.
started going down a rabbit hole, I would be like, tell me something great that happened last week, or like, didn't you tell me last week about your dog? And like, I would try to find something more positive so that they would leave in a different energetic state. Because though it might feel good to dump and share all the negative crap, I also learned that I'm a magnet for people telling me things,
Oh,
later learning as a projector. You know when you told your hairdresser, "Come on, everybody."
that's right.
And sometimes people would overshare, and I related that to the reason why sometimes they didn't come back because they were like, "Oh, shit, I can't believe I told her that, like, I can't ever go back now."
Yes.
And I was like, "Okay, if we can just find the happy medium in there," and I guess I share that story for you guys because I feel like if you're a space holder, if you're somebody who's in the mentorship coaching arena, you will come across this. You will have people who want you to fix them, and if you can listen to anything that Rob was talking about is to redirect the energy back
Mm.
to them, but by showing. So if you are creating content, if you are putting stuff out there, it doesn't always have to be sing-songy and perfect. You guys go follow Rob. You'll see sometimes he's in his car sharing something heartfelt and there's tears and it looks like he's not happy because if you're crying, generally you're not crying about something, that you're super happy about. And I think it's those vulnerable moments where we can all feel connected and move through those feelings of quote unquote unhappiness, frustration, anger, anything that's not happy, and get through it faster so that you're not sitting in that shit for so long.
Wow.
And I gotta ask you though too though, because
Perfect. Yeah.
do you ever still catch yourself, like, not
Yeah.
practicing what you teach?
Oh my goodness. You have to. Yes. I mean, I'm going to have to be vigilant my entire life. I'm convinced of this. Ramana Maharshi was one of my favorite. He was a teacher, spiritual teacher, sort of a reluctant one. He had this enlightened experience, the experience of enlightenment, and he went out into the forest and just became a wandering ascetic. And he didn't need to be around people. He was just living a state of like bliss. And people would wander through the forest. And then before long, an ashram developed around him. And he wasn't interested in talking. He was just going to experience, enjoy his blissfulness. And eventually he started talking because people kept asking questions and the silence wasn't enough for them. So he eventually was asked, Ramana, like, of all people, do you have to stay vigilant? He's like, my gosh, yes. Of course, yes. So for me, no question about it. I have to remain vigilant. That being said, it's infinitely easier than it's ever been before because, the brain is plastic and we rewire the brain in ways that makes this kind of experience and this discipline a lot more enjoyable and we become a lot more efficacious at it in an automatic, organic, seamless way, right?
Yeah.
It's just so much easier. So, yes, for sure. A few other things I just want to speak to because you just crushed a few points and I just want to highlight them for people so they can hear it again. One is you're right. When folks are struggling, you do want to meet them where they are. So you want to validate, normalize, empathize. Critical, okay? Especially if you want them to hear you, especially if you want them to hear you. So you validate, normalize, empathize. And the truth is, when you say something like, if I were in your shoes, I'd be feeling the same way. That doesn't mean that you are feeling the same way. It just means that if you were them, you would be them and you'd be feeling like them and thinking like them. Okay. That's like 75% of it. But then from there, you can offer up, to your point, some really beautiful and wonderful pivots. You can redirect the conversation and channel in directions that are much more productive. Now, the people who are best at this do it in ways that are almost invisible, right? And so you're really good like this, Jessica. I heard it right there. Some of the questions that you can ask, some of the questions that I use, I think are simple things, sort of like, and we call them golden bridges, right? But it's sort of like, wow, I can imagine how awful that must feel. What would you like to feel instead?
Mm.
Very gentle, right? And you can quickly see if they take the bait and they move down that in that direction, you'll see their body language and everything change. And if they don't, you know where they are in the stage of change. They're not in a place where they're even contemplative around change, right? Certainly not an action stage. Other questions that I love, especially when someone comes at you really hot, they're just unloading on you. Would you rather, I really want to be helpful here. Would you like to be most heard, hugged, or helped? Right? So the idea heard means that you just want to vent. Okay, you want to vomit on me. Okay, that's okay too. Hugged, just a hug. Or helped. Helped means we're going to go into problem solving mode. My challenge is like you, Jessica. I love solving stuff. I want to solve the problem. And especially if I know the PIN code to the ATM machine that will get you millions or billions of dollars, let's do that shit now, right? Let's do it
Mhm.
right now. Let's plug in the PIN code and move on. But I've discovered that so many people aren't there and they don't need to be there. And I need to accept them not being there without it affecting the way I feel on the inside. Right. And that doesn't mean that you have to stay in the conversation forever or that you need to be a doormat for people or that you need to be an enabler. Right. Some people just continue talking about the problem endlessly without interruption. And it's not your job to continue to be, for some folks, a source of the narcissistic supply. right? So anyway, back to your point. The one other question that's something to ask is, just very simply, what here is controllable? What here is controllable? What can we do? Because if it's something you can control, let's do it and not worry. If it's something that you can't control, let's ignore it and not worry, right? But either way, let's get out of this place of like sort of spinning our wheels.
Yeah, I love that. That's such great advice, and I think it's something that you guys can even do to yourself if you catch yourself in that negative self-talk spiral, because a lot of these conversations we're having with ourself, and we are talking to ourselves like that. You are vomiting on yourself in the car ride to school pickup or drop off, or you didn't do the thing you said you were gonna do again, or, partner pissed you off and you're in your head having this whole ass conversation because maybe you don't have a best friend to call and there's no one to give you a hug or to just hear you. And so you have to be that person for yourself at times if you don't have a meaningful person in your life or, bat line to call somebody in that moment. You have to learn, I think, to, I guess I would call it more like self-soothe or to like work through that problem. Is that something that you do for yourself also?
And love this so much, Jessica. I mean, in fact, what is a great friend? What is a great therapist? What is a great psychologist? What is a great coach? They are people who simply model for you what you want to be doing for yourself, what you can do for yourself, but you might not be ready for yet. Without question, I mean, I was so ashamed and embarrassed about being so depressed and so suicidal and so stressed out and anxious and self-loathing and self-hating that I really didn't share it very much with people. And that meant that I had to learn to do it for myself, by myself. I did learn through authors. Thank God for books. Thank God for authors and spiritual teachers out there in the world or psychological teachers out there in the world. And I would put it into practice. Yes, without question, at the end of the day, the Calvary's not coming. It's not coming. Like, no one can do this work for you. And trust me, I've tried. I want to do the work for people. I want to do their push ups. I want to do their bench presses. I want to do the squats. I want to so badly. And I discovered very early on, Rob, it's not only not your job, it's also not your pleasure and privilege. Everyone has to do it themselves. And the beautiful thing about it is that, yes, it does require some investment of time and energy, but it doesn't have to be hard work. It doesn't have to be painful. It doesn't have to be something that you dread. In fact, I love it. I enjoy it. It's probably my favorite thing to do ever, which is like to practice telling truthful, better feeling stories, to quiet my mind, all the things you're talking about that speak directly to self soothing and emotional regulation.
Do you do that through journaling or meditation practices? Do you have any like physical, like, okay, I go to the beach to ground when I'm feeling this way, or I go and, get myself a snack, or is there like a ritual around some of the things that to help you process to do this? Or is it just like sit in the corner and talk to yourself? Like, how do you,
Yeah, yeah.
or do certain things require different levels of action, I'm sure, but like, is there like things that you love doing that have helped you?
Yes. So in the beginning, I would just play sports. I mean, that was
Mm,
my jam. I'd play
yeah.
sports, I'd go practice basketball. Sometimes, though, that would lead to more spiraling and spinning out, right? So for me, but running was probably the first meditation I ever did was a moving meditation just called running, right? I would just run. I didn't know it was moving meditation, but I was so doggone tired when I was done. My mind was really quiet. I was like, wow, I'm just grateful to be able to breathe again and not be in pain again, right? So that was the beginning. And then later, I would just listen to other people's thoughts. I was convinced my brain was broken and that if I was left to my own thoughts, I would continue to self destruct and make a mess of my life. And so I thought, well, if nothing else, let me at least listen to other people who are positive and successful. Let me do it like until through osmosis, it becomes my brain. I almost wanted to replace my brain with theirs. So I would just listen to it at night when it was like, I was hoping it would just seep in there subliminally. I would listen all day long. I'm sure I drove many girlfriends out of my life because I would listen to the car all day, every day. I didn't care. Could we put on Abraham Hicks? Could we put on Eckhart Tolle? Right. So I would just do that endlessly. And then over time, it became a more refined, sort of polished process where I did a little journaling, but mostly it was a gratitude journaling because I discovered that journaling for most folks, while it's good in the beginning, for lots of folks, it just continues to reify or solidify, yeah, the negativity and the self, criticism and all that good stuff. So I eventually moved beyond that even, and then it just became about doing it on the fly. You really want to get to a place where you're doing it on the fly. So when other people are talking to you and they're saying negative things, like I have a tape running in my head that immediately like translates what they're saying into something that I feel is truthful, but way better feeling. Now, I won't always reflect that back to them, but in my head, I have a different experience than they did. So they might walk away and be like, wow, thanks, Rob, for being there for me and hearing all this, negativity that I'm sharing. And I appreciate that. And that's partly what's happening. But for me, no. The final thing that I do these days, I mean, still read, but the greatest practice I've discovered is just stopping thinking. Just
Mm.
don't. I think this is why you see these laughing Buddhas, like these little statues or little miniature, versions of Buddha, laughing at how simple and stupid we've all been along the way. And for me, the fact that I created all this suffering for myself by thinking so much and overthinking everything, when the truth is, if I could be a little bit more like an idiot, like a small child, like a small, right? My God, my life is so much happier as a result of it. Like, I don't think about so many things that I used to think about, and I'm so much more peaceful, and
Mm,
success comes so much more easily, and relationships go so much better. And we can all do it. If I can do it, anybody can do it. You can, if you want, just shower without thinking about all your problems. You can eat without worrying about everything in the future. You can go for a walk without regretting everything that happened to you in the past. You can just simply walk for the joy of it without thinking,
mm,
right? So unitasking and practicing the presence, we'll call it of peace or of love or happiness. Some people call it practicing the presence of God, but it's practicing the presence of unconditional, unshakable, immovable faith, confidence, peace, love, and happiness by not thinking about anything or anybody.
mm. That's so powerful, and I know you guys are listening thinking, "Yeah, that's easier said than done." I would challenge you to limit the things that are stimulating you so that your brain is going 100 million miles a minute. I notice if I drink too much coffee, where does my brain wanna go? Overdrive. I notice if I've been scrolling on social media, even if you're watching on YouTube, air quote, doing it for research for work, I need to put the phone down so that I can shut my brain off. My thing is getting into the sun. I just turn my face to the sun wherever I'm at, whether it's in the car, open the sunroof, stick my head out the window for a minute, or go on my patio. Like, it literally, that's all I have to feel is the warmth. It almost just like erases whatever's coming over me and consuming me because I can come up with all kinds of fucked up shit to worry about. I've always said I'm too smart to be like a rap star because I couldn't come up with a dumb enough lyric. I mean, we could throw out some really, I'm like, "Damn, if I coulda just thought of that, like, I'd have been a bazillionaire." And then also, you think about the simplification of certain things that have made people so successful, or the way that if you just simplify something, you can teach it, which then becomes like, "Oh my god, someone's like $100,000 a month digital course." You're like, "Wow, they're just selling something so simple." You're like, "Yeah, because our brains are so overwhelmed with all of the what ifs and the should haves and the could haves and the fucking guilt that we feel over, not cooking your kid breakfast this morning or not, going to bed mad with your partner. So many things that you
Mm,
can dwell on. We could make a list, 10 miles long. But what good is that going to do for anybody? And honestly, like, your body doesn't know the difference between good stress and bad stress. So if you are stressing yourself out, thinking negatively and like being overwhelmed in that state, I can tell you, you will start to get things like, a sty in your eye or a cold sore or, autoimmune disorder or unexplained things happening to you physically because you are manifesting that inner chaos and stress will come out externally. I've seen it in people losing their hair. I mean, all sorts of things. And weight gain, weight loss, all of it. And this is such an important topic. And while it might have seemed lighthearted in the first few minutes when we kicked this off of like, oh, happiness coach, this is the most important fucking thing that you could ever focus on in your entire life if you listen to this episode this far. I hope it's sinking in because I know that it's not just something maybe you needed to hear today. It's something that I guarantee 5 people in your life need to hear. So take this podcast episode, send to a couple friends and be like, "This was such a powerful episode around happiness. I want nothing but happiness for myself and you, so I'm sending you this episode." Things like this can be such a gift to somebody, and we really truly never know what somebody else is going
oh,
through or what they
mm,
could use. Like, this could be a literal virtual hug to somebody or a family member who's struggling. I have 2 brothers who are addicts, one with alcohol, one with drugs, and, like, that to witness that and to be that close to people who are going through that, being unhappy to me is an addiction too.
that's right.
And you
Mm,
can choose something different. That is what I want you to take away from today's episode is that you can choose something different. And if you have to listen to this episode back 5 times, please do. And if you wanna work with somebody on a high level like Rob, you can work with him, you can reach out to him, or you can just go get into his world, follow him on Instagram, and go enjoy some videos that are gonna make you rethink how maybe you've been thinking. And even if you would rate your happiness 7 out of 10, why don't you want 10 out of 10? So let yourself acknowledge where you're at and move away from the things like even journaling potentially, like Rob said earlier, that was what I felt like every morning I would wake up and kind of dig for the things I did wrong. to, like, get out, like, that needed to go in the journal, along with some gratitude stuff, but I remember reading back through my journals and I'm like, "You're writing the same shit over and over again. Are you gonna keep dwelling on this negative stuff that happened in the past or last week or whatever, or are you gonna move on?" And so when I took journaling kind of out of practice in the morning and just started reading from my favorite authors again, it changed everything for me because most authors are trying to, like, help teach or lead you somewhere, and that I learned was sometimes I need a page, a paragraph. I don't need a lot always to get me into that regulated state, so I'm thinking positively, I'm ready to get out of bed and excited to go to the gym and do the things. But I know you also wrote about relationships and love, and in your work around that, what's the most
Mm.
I don't even know if you can answer this. What's the most common self-sabotage, like, pattern you see in people who genuinely want to find love or be in
Mm.
love or to stay in love, but they can't seem to, like, hold on to it, whether it's in friendships or actually intimate relationships?
They outsource how they feel. They call it accountability, or they call it betrayal. Or they call it, I mean, there's lots of words for it, but the idea is somebody else is responsible for me feeling unhappy, unloved, lonely, stressed out, anxious. And if you think that they're the problem, then you have to also believe that they are the solution. And that's highly problematic. That is the very basic basis of all unhappiness, is that somebody or something else has to change before I can feel better, right? And then we just call it, oh, it's a desire. I have a desire for a relationship, or I have a desire for a better partner, or I have a desire, to get out of this relationship. But for most of us, a desire is just a commitment to being or feeling unhappy or unloved or lonely until we get what we think we need or want to shore that up. And that's always bullshit, right? That's always, 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 and forever. And even if it weren't, it's a really bad way to live, and it sets you up for failure and unhappiness. So yeah, the happiness and love are really, for me, synonyms. Okay,
Yeah.
if you're happy and you happen to be alone, we call it happiness. If you're happy and you happen to be in the company of somebody else, they experience it as love, and you do too. Okay, so happiness is really like ingoing love, or the love that sits inside of you all day, and love is just outgoing happiness, or the happiness that is contagious or infectious when you're with other people, right? But we have these ideas about love that make it sound like it's separate from happiness, that you can be love or you can experience love without happiness. I'd say that's not love, that's pseudo love, right? It's pseudo love. If you're quote unquote in love and you're not happy, I don't call that true love, right? So yeah. So in all this to say, people use love as a way to excuse their unhappiness. They just project it onto other people. They blame other people or other things for their lack of love being feelings, or feeling loved, or for the lack of happiness.
That is so powerful. Whew. We could mic drop on that one, but if you had to strip everything that you teach down, right? Like, let's simplify your entire life's work in 2 seconds
Yeah. Yeah.
and create a couple of non-negotiables, 2, 3 of them for living a fulfilled, happy life. What are they?
Great question. The first thing that comes to mind is no thoughts, no problem. Try to have a problem without any thoughts. Can't do it. Can't do it. So it's that simple. So that's the first piece. I mean, if you want the cheat code in the Cliff Notes version, no thoughts, no problem, only peace, love, and happiness. So if that's too much for folks, because it can be in the beginning, and it does sound like something that's easier said than done, but I'd
Sure.
argue in the end, it's something that's easier done than said. When I say it, people don't understand it, but when they experience it, that is the explanation, right? So that's number one. The second thing is just telling truthful, better feeling stories about everything and everybody, starting with yourself and doing it just to feel better, not to get any results, not to be successful, not to be good or moral, ethical, or positive. Do it because your life is fleeting. It's almost gone. You're almost dead. We're only here for a weekend, and that weekend's almost up. Okay. And you don't know how fast that weekend will be over. So do this damn thing. Do it now. Don't wait. Don't hesitate. Don't procrastinate. Dive in to being as happy as you can by telling truthful, better feeling stories. Do it in your own head. Do it in conversations with other people. You don't need to argue with people about it. Just do it for your own sake, right? And then you'll find that everything else starts to get sort of lined up for you. One other thing I'll say is this, is if there are people in your life that aren't supportive, that aren't loving, that don't at least aspire to be, they don't have to be happy, but they don't aspire to be happy, you want to cut those people out as quickly as humanly possible. One bad apple spoils the lot. Okay. One drop of poison makes the whole glass of water poisonous. Do not think that you'll ever get to a place where you are happy enough to sustain relationships or friendships with people who are committed to being miserable and making you miserable too. It does. I've tried it. over and over again. Everyone else has tried it. This is why, you see like, all these phenomenal spiritual teachers, other people, they get shot or assassinated, whatever it is, because one bad person, one person who is an energy vampire can pollute and ruin your entire life, as far as we're concerned. So that's the final piece is like, yes, support people, love people, but often you can love people better from a distance. You can support them better from a distance.
Absolutely, especially now in this social media world, you know what I mean? Like, you can support them from a distance in a variety of, like, now respectable ways, whether it's through a podcast or through it's your social content or showing things on your page that are gonna be supportive of that lifestyle, right? You showing instead of telling. Mm, I
Cool. Can
love
I say one
that.
more thing there? You
Yes.
just said something I want to share, and you said it earlier. I just want to underscore it again because it was so powerful. And that is, don't believe the hype. Don't believe the hype. Like 20 years I've been, doing TV and media and coaching and speaking and writing books, and I've been extraordinarily lucky. And I just call it luck. I'll call it maybe grace. Okay. I did not have a plan. I still don't have a plan. Occasionally I had a plan, but the plan never worked, ever worked, even when I learned that plan or picked up that plan from very successful people who were teaching it. Okay. I took marketing courses and advertising courses. And to this day, I don't pretend to have it all figured out. And I don't pretend to even understand why the things that have worked out for me have worked out for me. But I feel pretty strongly that when I began to lean in to genuinely being happy for its own sake and not making that dependent on other people and other things, and I really valued presence in and of itself,
Well, gee,
magical, miraculous things seem to fall out of thin air, out of the clear blue sky for no good reason. Somebody calls you up and say, "Hey, do you want to do this meeting person thing?" Or, "Hey, we saw your book," after you sent it to like 30, 40 publishers and they all said no. And somebody says, "Hey, I heard you have a book. I want to publish it." Like, how does that happen? Or you get called for a TV show. Like, these things make no sense. Like, I tried all the traditional paths that people tell you to try in order to make things work. Most of them not only did they not bear fruit, they made me frustrated, and they were like epic fails, like huge failures. But when I relaxed, I began to rest and said, "Let me enjoy my life regardless of what happens to me in any other way." All of a sudden, things start to work out, right? You can even see that with dating, right? The person who's least interested in dating or all of a sudden is off the market is getting tons of offers from other people. Same thing with money. The wealthiest people who don't care about making any more money suddenly get offers from other people for loans or for investments. So that's the other piece that I just want to talk to people about, because a lot of people, some of them are well intentioned, some of them are not. They want to sell you on ideas that they personally and selfishly benefit from that sound pretty logical to you, but they're often logical fallacies. Like, life has its own logic and it won't always make sense to you. You don't have to understand it. I just know that based on science and based on my own experience, when I've gotten happier, things have gone better. And I don't know how or why. I don't need to know because I just like the results.
I just like the results. I'm on board with that. I don't need to know the how. I just, just
Yeah.
the action and the taking of that. Okay, let's close with I have this amazing mastermind going right now, and there are a lot of women in there because most of my audience, I think, is predominantly women on the show, are building something super meaningful or wanting to build something super meaningful, but they're holding themselves back from being fully seen. And so the House of Influence is all about helping them create visibility, not giving them a blueprint or a roadmap that's worked for me. Like you just said that so perfectly, but it's for them to figure out their own path, but be in a container with other people, like you just said, that are all good apples wanting to grow, wanting to be seen, wanting to be happy, wanting to be fulfilled, wanting to do these things, But why do you think that so many people, women in particular, are hold back from being seen and allowing that visibility of who they truly are? Is it fear of judgment, criticism? What do you
Mm.
think's underneath that?
All of it. It's overthinking. And a lot of that is just, it's programming, conditioning. Look, we live in a society. It's so beautiful and wonderful in so many ways. Also, there are so many double standards and so many challenges and hurdles that are thrown in women's way that it's so frustrating, right? So it's extra hard for women for lots of ways, just because of social and political and cultural programming, conditioning, expectations. So I'd say first and foremost, it's all of that. Fear of success. What does that mean? Am I going to be judged for being successful? Am I going to be judged? People are going to think I slept my way to the top, right? Fear of failure, right? Oh my God, she went on a limb and tried this thing. Fear of criticism. It's all of it, right? But the bottom of all of that, and you nailed it earlier, is an addiction to obsessive compulsive thinking, right? And if you can come around to really appreciating this main point that we're sort of trying to drive home here, which is that you cannot be happy or authentically successful, like meaningfully successful, if you only vet thoughts, your own thoughts, and other people's thoughts and ideas based on whether or not they sound true or they're true. There are lots of things that are true that are not helpful, okay? Not helpful at all. You want to vet thoughts, particularly ones in the conversation you have with yourself, based on whether or not they're true and helpful. Do they help you get to where you want to get? Will that support you in getting where you want to get? So if you have thoughts of judgment or criticism and all these things, they sound true, but they're not helpful. They're just blocking your way. They're getting in the way.
Mhm.
So yes, it's all those things you said, but at the bottom of it is an addiction to obsessive compulsive thinking, and lots of that thinking is negative and redundant and extraordinarily unhelpful.
Whew, I can't wait to dig into some of this on the call because I do see it happening so often. And it's the thing that breaks my heart the most because there's so many amazing people, men and women, who have so much to give in this world that hold themselves back and self edit and overthink and criticize the shit out of themselves and they don't put themselves out there. And it breaks my heart because I want to see people win. And when you can kind of see through the noise of what someone's saying or not doing, it's like I've learned that through coaching of someone usually comes to you with a surface level problem and then we dive 5 layers deep and really figure out what's holding them back to have that belief in the first place. And it's usually a thought that's not serving them. So, oh, we could talk for 5 hours always. I just feel like you guys this is such a critical time to have this type of a conversation. It's always important to have this kind of a conversation, but with what's going on in the world right now with the social pressures, with the abundance of AI and online comparison, like simplifying it, if you just listen to this episode back and every answer Rob gave was basically to simplify, to stop. It was not to add anything new. It wasn't to like change some grandiose ways or spend a bunch of money or do anything drastic. It was to stop thinking so much or to eliminate that negative people in your life if need be or to just allow something to be what it is and if it's true okay but if it's not serving you like let's stop thinking about it. And I'm going to take so much of this to heart because I know I still do it in a variety of different ways, but also to have that support and know that my role is not to make other people happy, it's to lead by example. And if I just focus on me, then hopefully all I see around me is other happier people. Because I think if you're miserable, all you're going to see is misery. If you're happy, you're going to see the positive and stuff. It just is what it is. And that is fact. The more beautiful opportunities will fall in your lap, things will happen because you're in a different frequency, you're in a different state, and that's just facts. It is.
Mm.
It's just facts. And I always say to my clients and to people listening on the show, like, I don't think clarity comes before taking the action. I think you have to take the action and see what happens. And if someone's on this, they're still at the end of this podcast now, it's like, what's one thing that we can encourage them to do to actually move the needle forward towards a more fulfilling, happy life? Like, what's one little action step they can take in the next day?
Try to consistently, as much as you can, live in the feeling state that you expect to achieve through your success. Try to live in that feeling state today. Now. And
Now.
and any reason is a good enough reason to do it. It's sunny outside, like you said, instant optimism. Like you don't need 1,000 reasons. You need one reason to feel better, and you don't have to feel perfect. You don't have to even call it happiness. Just what's one thing you could focus on exclusively to feel better? Maybe it's the puppy. Maybe it's a good-looking person that just walked by. It could be the sun. It doesn't have to be anything big. If you can just find a way to feel a little more relief, to chill out, rest, relax, have a little bit more fun, lighten up. I mean, what is enlightenment? Enlightenment is lightening up and it's also lighting up. When you lighten up, that means dropping all the burdens, all the things that are holding you back. And those things include lots of things that people will tell you should do. Like we all should on each other and we should on ourselves, right? But the truth is, it's all bullshit. I have experienced incredible success not doing any of it, and I've experienced a ton of failure doing all of it, right? So I'd say trying your best to live in the feeling state of the wish fulfilled, which for me I call happiness, and doing it just to feel good, and then trusting that that will attract the right people and the right opportunities and the right experiences for you. And you don't have to follow anybody else's guidebook, including my own, right? You can carve out your own path.
Yes, but for those of you who wanna dive deeper into Rob's work,
Yes.
where can we find the 2 books that you have?
Yeah, you can find happiness from the inside out and love from the inside out everywhere great books are sold, including Amazon and Barnes and Noble.
Do you have any mentors, podcasts, or books that you feel have changed your life or would be a good place for someone to start, aside from your books, obviously, that have really, like, been a catalyst for you?
Oh my God. That's like choosing a favorite body organ or friend or family member. My God, Jessica, I love that question. Yes, so many. I mean, probably in the beginning was Abraham Hicks and Eckhart Tolle, Byron Katie, Osho, Richard Carlson, Thich Nhat Hanh, Ernest Holmes, Joel Goldsmith, Ramana Maharshi. I mean, so many folks. Golly, Anthony DeMello was listening
You
to
got
him again today.
you guys, I'm gonna make him type me out these
Yeah,
names, and I'm gonna
yeah, I
put them in
will.
the show notes,
I
okay?
will.
I want a
I
list of
will.
names. Okay, give me the top 10 names, and then give me, like, a couple of other people that you follow, maybe they have a podcast or maybe they have a presence on social media that when you watch their stuff, it makes you feel better about your life rather than the opposite. I think we all have those like unspoken mentors they don't even know we exist, but we like are obsessed with them and they've changed our life
Totally.
and we'll never get to meet them.
And
I'm
we're
grateful.
convinced we're best friends. We're convinced I know.
Well,
I'm convinced I know 'em. We're best friends. In my head, I just use their first name. I've become on a first name basis with them when I talk to them. You know Joel? Yeah, you know Tick? What are you talking about, Ross?
or
Yeah.
you guys, or I highly suggest starting a podcast so that you can become real life friends with people like Rob and then actually call them your friends. Just saying.
That actually, by the way, such a brilliant point, which is that podcasts are phenomenal relationship brokering like technique. It really is.
It is selfishly why I stay in the game because these moments
Mm.
are life changing for me. And even when I get to listen to these episodes back time and time again, I'm like, somebody else got to listen to that conversation. How lucky are they? You know,
Mm.
also, how lucky am I to facilitate it? And when I started interviewing guests, you guys, I wasn't any good. I couldn't complete a sentence without saying like and stuttering over my words. And now, you get better with practice and time. Just like I'm sure the first time Rob was on set in front of all the cameras with the hot lights, he
Oh,
was shitting his pants. But then you put the reps in and you get better, and that's the same with this practice that we've been talking about for this whole 1 hour and 3-minute episode so far. It's like, start to practice all of these things that we talked about. Start with one small thing, right? You hear yourself say something negative. How can you reframe it? You were feeling some type of way. Go ground somewhere, stick your face in the sun, you know? Turn your brain off. If you've noticed that you're drinking too much coffee or you're using stimulants that you shouldn't, like, what can you do to quiet the noise so that you can maybe think less? It's not even about thinking about something different, it's just about thinking less. I love that. So, I always get stuck in the overthinking and overcomplicating, so this was so powerful and so helpful. I'm so grateful for you, Rob.
I cannot tell you how much I love and appreciate you, Jessica, and I mean this. You don't just talk the talk, you walk the walk, and you're just a living, loving light. And I will be infinitely grateful for you. And I mean that. Like, you have invited me back into this conversation on multiple occasions when you could have invited anyone in the world to have this conversation. So it means more to you than I'll ever be able to express. Thank you, not just for being in conversation with me, but for sharing like your gifts and your wisdom and your insight with the whole world. Like, we so sorely need it. So thank you.
Mm. Oh, love you guys. And we will see you next week on the Jessica Burgio Show. Go down in the show notes, get all the goodies, go follow Rob, grab his books. And again, if you felt moved by this episode, please send it to a couple friends who everybody wants to feel a little bit happier. Everybody wants a little love, a little nudge, a little reminder that they can be happier and live a better, more fulfilled life. Take
Send
care,
it to your
guys.
enemies too.
Yeah,
Send
I love
it
that.
to
Did
the
you guys
enemies.
catch that? Say it again.
Yeah. Yeah, you can send it to your enemies too, maybe them first. People you
Smiley
really
face
hate.
emoji in the DMs.
Yeah, yeah.
Obsessed. Thank you so much, Rob. We'll see you guys next time.
Thank you.